What if the strategy that gave you power becomes the reason you lose it? You find something that works. Confidence grows. People begin recognizing you for it. The method becomes part of your identity. Then the world changes. At first, you adjust the details while protecting the method. When results weaken, you push harder. You repeat the same move with more money, more force, and more certainty. You tell yourself persistence is character. But there is a point where persistence stops protecting the mission and begins protecting the ego that chose the plan. How do you know when to continue, when to stop, and when to become something the old version of you could not have predicted? I'm Sarah, and this is Wise Mind Stories. This is the final episode of our journey through the 48 Laws of Power. 4 laws bring the season to its natural conclusion. Law 29 tells us to plan all the way to the end. Law 45 warns that people need change, but often resist too much change at once. Law 47 tells us to stop after victory instead of pushing beyond the goal. And Law 48 gives the final instruction: assume formlessness. Together, they reveal the limit of every other law. A strategy can create power only while you remain free to release it. By the end of this episode, you will understand why successful people often continue past the point of success, how to lead change without exhausting the people who must carry it, and what it means to remain adaptable without becoming empty or directionless. Let's begin with Olivia. Olivia Grant became chief executive of Harbor and Pine, a family-owned home goods company with 42 stores. Her grandfather had opened the first store in 1964. For decades, the company sold cookware, linens, lamps, and furniture to families who returned generation after generation. But by the time Olivia took over, sales had fallen for 5 straight years. The website was slow. Inventory systems were outdated. Younger customers recognized the name, but rarely entered the stores. Employees loved the company's history and feared becoming part of it. Olivia was 38 and impatient. She had spent 10 years building digital businesses. The board hired her because she was willing to change what the family had protected. Her first plan was focused. She selected 6 stores for a digital pilot. Customers could see local inventory online, reserve products, and pick them up the same day. Store employees created short videos showing how items worked in real homes. The pilot succeeded. Online orders grew. Store visits increased. Employees who had feared the technology began suggesting improvements. Business magazines praised Olivia as the leader who had finally brought Harbor and Pine into the future. The board celebrated. That success created a new danger. Olivia began confusing speed with leadership. She expanded the digital system to every store before the pilot problems had been fully documented. She launched a subscription service, a third-party marketplace, and a loyalty app in the same year. She changed the company logo, reorganized regional management, replaced several suppliers, and announced the closure of 12 underperforming stores. Each decision had a rational argument. Together, they removed every stable surface at once. Store managers no longer knew which priority mattered most. The new loyalty app did not communicate correctly with the inventory system. Suppliers received conflicting forecasts. Customers who had loved the old brand felt that the company was embarrassed by its own history. Employees stopped suggesting ideas because every process might disappear before the suggestion was reviewed. Olivia saw the confusion and accelerated. She held more meetings, added more deadlines, replaced cautious managers with people who shared her urgency. The language inside Harbor and Pine changed. Questions became resistance. Fatigue became a lack of adaptability. And every problem became proof that the transformation had not moved fast enough. This is the danger inside Law 45. Preach the need for change, but do not reform too much at once. People do not resist only because they are lazy or afraid. They resist when change removes the continuity that helps them understand who they are, what is expected, and whether today's sacrifice belongs to a coherent tomorrow. A bridge must reach the new side without destroying every place people can stand while crossing. Olivia had a vision for arrival. She had not designed the crossing. Then the company entered its most important holiday season with inaccurate inventory across 15 stores. Customers ordered products that were not available. Service teams faced thousands of complaints. Store employees spent hours locating items manually. At an emergency board meeting, Olivia presented another recovery plan. It included a new software vendor, a revised fulfillment model, and an accelerated warehouse project. The board chair, Eleanor Grant Olivia's aunt, closed the presentation. "No more new plans," she said. Olivia was stunned. "The current system is failing." "Yes, and you are using every failure to earn permission for another transformation." Eleanor asked the other executives to leave. Then she said something Olivia would remember for years. "You changed the strategy, then change became your identity. Now stopping feels like disappearing." That is Law 47. Know when to stop after victory. Olivia's original goal had been to prove that digital access could strengthen the stores. She had succeeded. But success produced attention, and attention created appetite. Each new initiative promised another announcement, another sign of momentum, another reason for the company to experience Olivia as necessary. Many people fail after victory because winning changes the emotional purpose of the game. At first, they want an outcome. Then they want the feeling the outcome created. An investor earns more than enough but keeps taking larger risks because ordinary returns no longer feel like success. A person wins an argument, then continues until the relationship is damaged because agreement was not as satisfying as submission. A creator finds an audience, then produces beyond exhaustion because silence feels like being forgotten. The point of enough moves every time they approach it. If you do not define where victory ends, appetite will define it after every win. Law 29 offers the prevention. Plan all the way to the end. Planning to the end does not mean predicting every event. It means thinking beyond the desired moment into the consequences that moment creates. What happens after the launch? Who maintains the system after the person who designed it leaves? How will competitors respond? What new behavior will success reward? Which risk appears only when the plan works? Olivia had planned how to roll out each initiative. She had not planned how many simultaneous changes the organization could absorb, which old behaviors needed to remain, or what she would stop doing if the first phase succeeded. The absence of an ending turned transformation into permanent emergency. For the first time, Olivia did something that looked like retreat. She froze every project that had not reached implementation. She kept the digital inventory system, but paused the marketplace, subscription, warehouse, and regional reorganization. She spent 6 weeks inside stores and customer service teams. Employees expected another speech. Olivia asked them to show her where the work broke. She discovered that the original pilot had succeeded partly because local managers adapted it. The national rollout had removed that flexibility in the name of consistency. Harbor and Pine did not need another total system. It needed a stable core with room for local judgment. This is Law 48. Assume formlessness. Water has direction without insisting on one shape. It moves around an obstacle, changes speed, gathers in one place, and continues when an opening appears. Formlessness does not mean having no values, no plan, or no identity. Without a center, flexibility becomes drift. The goal is to keep purpose stable while allowing method to change. Olivia had confused Harbor and Pine's form with its purpose in two different ways. The older company believed its purpose was stores. Olivia began believing its purpose was digital transformation. Both were forms. The deeper purpose was helping people create homes that felt cared for through trusted guidance and accessible products. Sometimes that purpose required a store, sometimes a website, sometimes a local employee making a short video, sometimes a service the company had not invented yet. Once the purpose became clear, the argument between old and new lost power. Olivia created a slower sequence. First, the company repaired inventory accuracy. Then it allowed each region to choose one customer experience experiment. New projects could begin only when an existing one had a defined owner, maintenance plan, and stopping condition. She also restored parts of the company's visual history that the redesign had erased. The old pine tree mark returned inside the new logo. Long-term employees helped tell the story of what the company had preserved and what it was willing to change. Within 18 months, Harbor and Pine became stable again. Growth was slower than Olivia's original forecast. It was real. She did not lose authority by changing direction. She lost the image of being the person who had always known the correct direction. That image had been the obstacle. Formlessness requires a difficult kind of ego, strong enough to choose, loose enough to revise. You cannot adapt if every change of mind feels like public evidence that the earlier self was foolish. And you cannot lead change if flexibility means everyone else must live in permanent uncertainty. The balance is not rigidity or chaos. It is stable purpose, visible principles, and revisable methods. This distinction can change an individual life as much as a company. Perhaps being the responsible child once protected your family. You learned to anticipate needs, hide your own fear, and solve problems before anyone asked. Years later, the role remains even when the emergency is gone. You do not know how to receive help because usefulness has become your form. Perhaps ambition carried you out of a difficult beginning. It taught you to work, save, and ignore distraction. Then you reached safety, but your body still experiences rest as danger. The strategy succeeded. Your nervous system never received the message that the battle ended. Or perhaps a painful betrayal taught you to notice every inconsistency. Vigilance protected you from being fooled twice. Later, a trustworthy person enters your life, but the same vigilance interprets intimacy as loss of control. Old strategies are not foolish because they become outdated. Many were intelligent responses to an earlier environment. Formlessness begins with gratitude rather than shame. This protected me then, and I am allowed to need something different now. That sentence separates adaptation from self-rejection. You do not need to declare war on every former version of yourself. You can keep the strength while releasing the shape it once required. Responsibility can become shared responsibility. Ambition can become chosen excellence instead of permanent escape. Discernment can remain without treating every person as a future betrayer. The method changes because reality changed, not because the earlier self failed. This is also why planning to the end includes an emotional ending. After a long crisis, project, or pursuit, create a moment that tells people the state has changed. Mark completion. Name what was learned. Restore routines. That emergency suspended. Without an ending, temporary survival behavior quietly becomes culture. Use a 4-part tool called Flow. F. Forecast the ending. Before beginning, define what success looks like, what new risks success creates, and who owns the result afterward. Include a stopping condition. Ask not only, how do we win, but what must remain healthy when the winning is over? Layer the change. Protect enough continuity that people can absorb the next step. Sequence major changes. Preserve rituals or structures that still serve a real need. Speed is useful only while the system can learn from movement. O. Observe the point of enough. Decide before emotion takes over when to stop investing, arguing, expanding, or pursuing. Review that line with people who are not rewarded by your continuation. Victory becomes dangerous when no one around you is allowed to say, "This is sufficient." Wear no fixed form. Separate values from methods. Ask which purpose the strategy serves and whether a different method could serve it better now. Do not become loyal to a tool merely because it once proved you were right. As this season ends, think back across the rooms we have entered. We saw that competence can threaten status, that words can surrender information, and that friendship needs structure. We saw how helpfulness becomes a cage, how concentration creates gravity, and how scarcity protects finite value. We learned to build an identity without performing perfection, end conflict without becoming consumed by it, and read hidden motives without exploiting wounds. We learned that truth needs a visible form, and that belief needs ethical limits. But every one of those lessons becomes dangerous when it hardens into a personality. Silence used everywhere becomes emotional distance. Scarcity used everywhere becomes isolation. Boldness used everywhere becomes recklessness. Reading people without love becomes manipulation. Power without self-correction becomes a prison that looks like control. So ask yourself, which strategy once protected you but now prevents you from changing? Where have you continued past the original victory because stopping would remove attention? What change are you forcing faster than trust can carry it? And beneath every role, method, and ambition, what purpose must remain when the form changes? The final law is not the most aggressive law. It is the law that keeps every other law from owning you. Learn the game. See the incentives. Protect your position, but remain capable of putting the strategy down. Because the highest form of power is not controlling every room you enter. It is remaining free enough to leave the room, change the game, or become someone the old rules can no longer contain. Thank you for joining me for the 48 Laws of Power. And remember, you do not need another life. You may simply need another way to see this one.